So I want to talk a little bit tonight about courage, about bravery, and about the courage and the bravery that Abraham models in our Torah portion this week, Lech Lecha. We're just 3 parshiot into the Torah. As I said, there are 7 chapters in this parsha, so there's so much to choose from. This is where I went in my thinking tonight, but really, pick a theme, you could find it in the Torah this week. It's all there. But tonight, courage. So the Torah tells us that 10 generations have passed since Noah and the flood. And all we know about Avram, which is what his name is at this section of Torah, his name is going to change at the end of the Parsha, but for now he's Avram, is that he's married to a woman named Sarai, who will also become Sarah, and that she was Akara ein la valad. She was barren and had no child. That's all we know about Abraham and Sarah, Avram v'Sarai. This sparse description of our matriarch and patriarch appears at the end of Parshat Noach from last week among a long list of generations after the flood. So often there'll be a big section at the end of a parsha, so-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so, and that's how we get through a bunch of generations. And that's the Torah's way of saying a whole lot of time passed. And we'll name all the people that were born. And it's in this long litany of names that Abraham gets named and Sarah gets named, and that she's barren. But other than that, we know nothing about them. And then suddenly we find ourselves at the beginning of Lech Lecha, at this week's Torah portion, and God is commanding Avram to go forth from his native land and from his father's house to the land that God is going to show him. We know nothing about his relationship with God. The Torah tells us 0 if they have any previous relationship. Are they close? Have they spoken? We know nothing. God doesn't make any introductions before making this commandment to Avram. There's no, hello, Avram. It's God, right? Which is what happens with Moses, right? I'm speaking from a bush. Take off your shoes. It's holy land. This is God. I'm about to give you a really important job. None of that happens here. There's no parameters. And even with Noach, there were parameters. Noach, who was not Jewish, who was born of a generation that was terrible, that was so bad it had to get destroyed. But Noach is described as walking with God, as the only righteous one in his generation. And God comes to him and says, Noach, everyone's terrible. I have to bring a flood. Here's your instructions. Here's the command. There's this whole beautiful framing for Noach, for why he has to build the ark and do the job that he has to do. Not so with Avram. We know nothing about him. We know nothing about his relationship with God. And then suddenly we hear, Vayomer Adonai el Avram, Lech Lecha. That's it. God said to Avram, Lech Lecha. Go forth. Go out. Lech Lecha, which in Hebrew, if you looked at it without vowels, they are exactly the same word. 2 letters, identical spelling, except for the vowel that gets attached. It is the most obscure little beginning of a parsha that's incredibly famous. Only the vowels differentiate. And the Torah could have said, Vayomer Adonai el Avram, Lech. Go. I'm giving you a command. Leave your home and everything you know with your barren wife Sarai and go to this land you don't know. But it doesn't. It says, Lech Lecha. And when there's a repetition in Torah, that should be like huge, bright floodlights. Ding, 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 ding. Something really important is happening right now, right? The Torah doesn't mess around when it repeats. Lech Lecha. Go yourself. Go to yourself. Go on a journey of self-discovery to this land that I'm going to show you. And I'm not going to tell you why. And I'm not going to give any special treatment to you or give you an introduction to me. I'm just going to give you a command. And I'm going to tell you, you have to be on this journey because it's for you and you're going to change. Vayomer Adonai el Avram, Lech Lecha. Go discover yourself on this journey. If you have ever been called by anything in your life, you will recognize this is a call from God to Avram. It is a classic call from the Torah. And a call in your life doesn't have to be from God. In the Torah, it's usually God to humans. But this is for sure a call. And God calls to Avram and says, your calling is to be brave and to leave everything that you have ever known in your life and to leave it behind and walk away from it and make brave new steps towards something new. And you'll discover what you're supposed to find once you go to this next place. So I've told the story of my own calling before to the rabbinate. I'll tell it briefly now. But there are so many ways in which we each feel called, and it's often messy, and it's often filled with obstacles and terrifying. It's not, I'm calling you, and here's the path paved before you, smooth and clear, right? That's not how it usually happens. It's usually, this is a terrifying thing I'm asking you to do, and yet you still have to do it, which is why it requires courage and bravery. I was a mess of indecision about becoming a rabbi until I met a man named Bill. I was going to visit my spiritual teacher, Elizabeth, who's a priest, and her friend Bill was there, and he was a priest as well. All my teachers are priests. And I have a few rabbis, but a lot of them are priests. And I was torn up inside about what I was supposed to do, feeling like I was supposed to become a rabbi, but it was expensive and it was impossible for my kids and there were obstacles and how could I do it? And this beautiful man, Bill, said, can we go on a walk tomorrow? Let's go take a walk. I'd never met him in my life. Met him that night. I said, okay. And the next day we took a walk. We were in Seattle, took a walk to a waterfall, and it was cold and misty, and we stood in front of this waterfall, and he heard me going, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what I'm doing. And he looked me in the eye and he said, do I hear you saying you're feeling called to become a rabbi? I said, no. You hear me saying, there's a million reasons why I shouldn't become a rabbi. And he said, no. I hear you saying you're feeling called, despite the fact that there are all of these things that are standing in the way. Those are part of the call. The obstacles are part of the call. Or a person who's choosing to become Jewish. Every single time I sit down with someone who says, I want to convert to Judaism, that is a call. And to a person, those people come to me and say, I don't really understand why I'm feeling this way, but I think I'm supposed to become Jewish. And for one woman that I worked with this year, it was that she kept wanting to read Holocaust books. She's a Japanese American woman, and she kept wanting to read these Holocaust books. And every time she read one, she felt like my people died in the Holocaust. And that was her call, that she was supposed to become Jewish. Or people who grew up Catholic or another faith, and all they wanted to do was hang out with their Jewish friends and go to Hanukkah and go to Passover, and lo and behold, every single person in their life was Jewish, and then they were like, oh my word, I'm supposed to become Jewish. This is crazy. This can't be the case. That's a call too. And all of these steps, all of these moments of calling require so much bravery and courage, because it's never a clean, clear path to do these huge life-transforming things. So what does it mean to be brave? I did a little bit of searching. So the Italian source for the word brave is to be bold. The Spanish is both courageous, which comes from the word heart, cœur or cœur in French, right? To have a heart-filled experience, or to be untamed, to be boundless in what you're supposed to be doing, which is really what happened for Abraham, right? For Avram, God was saying, leave all that you know. If you're being asked to leave everything that's familiar and that you know and go out into the wild, who knows what's going to be? That is you being untamed. Listening to the voice inside you that says you are meant for a particular purpose, meant to leave your particular mark on the world, even if the road ahead of you is not clear or easy. So in our Torah portion, this is the very beginning, right? It's this incredible Lech Lecha, and Abraham doesn't say a word. He says, okay, fine. There's no objection, but let's see what happens next. He follows the call. He gets to the land, and the very first thing that happens is there's a famine, and there's no food, and they have to leave. That would be enough of an obstacle for him to say, yeah, that's cool. I'm going to go back to my father's house. There's no food here. I don't even know who you are, God. I'm going to go back. But he doesn't. Instead, he goes to Egypt. We do a lot of going down to Egypt. Maybe we'll find food in Egypt. He goes down to Egypt, and his wife, Sarai, gets taken by the Pharaoh because she's so beautiful, and taken by the Pharaoh because she's so beautiful. Then his nephew Lot gets captured by bandits, and he has to wage war, all as a form, right, responding to the call. His wife gets captured. He has no food to eat. His nephew gets captured. He has to go to war. Then Sarai continues to be barren. She can't have a child. They are grief-stricken. So he has a child with his maidservant Hagar, and she gives birth to Ishmael, and that whole story happens, all still in this Torah portion, P.S. And finally, Sarai hears from God that she's going to get to have a child. And then the famous portion says she laughs because she's like, are you kidding me? I'm 90 years old. I'm not going to have a child. And God is like, it's part of the call. Yes, you are. Anything's possible. It's not easy. Right? Whatever the call is that you are feeling, it's not easy. It's not straightforward. It's often a path that's lined with obstacles that make you question whether or not you're doing the right thing in the first place. But when you are brave, when you're filled with courage and heart and your own wild self, and you follow your call of Lech Lecha, and you find who you're meant to be, you can't go wrong because you're going to discover who you are in the world. Responding to the call, you return back to yourself. You reach out and yourself responds, which is why I did Love After Love, right? You have this moment of a mirror image. Even when it's murky and impossible to see and scary, there is a way in which you have a mirror in front of yourself and to see who you're meant to be. So right after God calls Avram, before the famine, there's a little mini section, just a couple of verses. And God says, Lech Lecha, go out, leave your land. And what will happen? I will make of you a great nation, God says, and I will bless you. And I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. That's ultimately what will happen. If you can see beyond all of the fear, all of the obstacles, you will be a blessing when you come into the person that you're meant to be, no matter how much you have to get through. So my blessing for each and every one of us this evening on this Shabbat of Lech Lecha is that we each heed the call that we are meant to hear. No matter how many ways in which you're saying to yourself, it can't possibly be true. I can't do it. There's too many things in the way. I don't see the path. That's not the point, right? You have to have the courage to see beyond the messy path in front of you. And here's what you get in return. The poet Yehuda Halevi has this beautiful, tiny little poem that says, where might I go to find you, exalted, hidden one? Yet where would I not go to find you, ever-present, eternal one? My heart cries out to you, please draw near to me. The moment I reach out to you, I find you reaching in for me. So I want to bless us all to be brave, to be filled with heart, to be filled with courage, to be able to reach out and then reach back in and embody who we are each meant to be on this Shabbat of Lech Lecha. Shabbat Shalom.